In today's video, I want to share with you 10 cheap and cheerful watercolour equipment tips. Hello, I'm Paul Hopkinson, a professional wildlife artist and an online art tutor. I've been painting for over 40 years, and in that time I've come up with my own favourite bits of equipment that don't cost the earth but can make a real difference to your watercolour paintings. Here's just some of them, and we're going to start with a simple spray bottle. Now I do like to spray my paints before starting a painting, so all I use is an old spray bottle, one of these, very cheap to buy, and very lightly mist your paints, probably about 5 or 10 minutes before you start on the painting. That will help soften those paints down a little bit before you make a start. Now when I'm washing my brush out, I like to use a split water pot, so this is one specially made for painting with, as you can see, so dirty one side and clean on the other. So when I've got a very kind of dirty brush like this one here now, I'll just put some paint on it. I'll wash it in the dirty side first of all, like that. Okay, make sure it's in a flat surface. This isn't flat at the moment. Okay, so wash it in the dirty, give it a dry on some kitchen roll, then wash it again in the clean. Then when you come to use that brush again, it's nice and clean. Now you don't have to use something like this, a dedicated pot, something like that there. You can use something like a little glass jar, a little bit bigger than that maybe, but make sure that you've got quite large bases on those glass jars. And the reason why is that you don't want it tipping when you're using it. Now one of the items I do use is a pipette. It does enable you to be a bit more precise when you start adding a little bit of water into your mixing palette. Because if you use a spray bottle, which is my other method as well for kind of dampening down all the paint, using a pipette allows you to put just that one water droplet in at a time and allows you to kind of get your watercolour paint to the right consistency that you need to be able to make a start on the painting. Other than that, get some kitchen roll like that there, so it's nicely folded. Okay, and I'm going to very lightly take off the paint on top of the masking tape. And down there as well, a little bit down there. Try not to touch the painting. Then choose another area, there we go. And very carefully you can take off towards the middle. You won't be able to get right to the edge, but just be careful with this, as I said. The reason why I do this, you can find that paint doesn't dry as quickly on the tape, and you end up with paint on your fingers and sometimes back on your painting in the wrong place. You know when you get to the stage where your brushes tend to lose little hairs along the side there and you just can't get them flat again no matter what you've tried, because there's many ways of trying to flatten out and get your tips back on a brush, isn't there? I use a pair of nail clippers. Nail clippers? I know. But I use nail clippers because all you need to do, look, if you just come down the side, catch one of those hairs that's stuck out, a bit like my hairstyle at the moment, and you can very lightly trim that hair and throw it away. And any more you want to do, just very lightly just catch down the side like that and trim and take it away. So a pair of nail clippers is really handy to have within, believe it or not, your painting kit. And mechanical pencils, they've always got a sharp point. You haven't got to keep sharpening it with a pencil sharpener. And you can vary the leads as well. You can get soft leads and hard leads. The hard leads are useful when I'm transferring images out like now. So working with mechanical pencils is a really good way of maintaining very fine lines and also without damaging the paper. Remember, the softer the lead, the less damage you'll make to your watercolour surface by using softer leads on a mechanical pencil. But just remember not to press too hard with a pencil because it can damage your watercolour surface. So simply use light pressure, that's all you need. Graphite paper. Now this is something I use on a regular daily basis, I really do. And that's because it's a quick way of getting your reference image onto that watercolour surface. You don't want to press too hard, okay? But that depends obviously on the paper surface, on the pencil you're using, and also on the graphite paper. There's different makes of it out there. Now I tend to place little lines around the paper, little marks as you can see, just in around the edges even there, which allows me to realign that reference photograph back in the same position if I need to redraw some of those marks again. Now, I tend to flip it backward and forward so I can see where I've missed. Now I use what's called a putty eraser. Now these are the ones here, look. So you got Faber-Castell one, which is one I use all the time. And there's different makes there, but they're really, really handy because unlike a normal eraser like this one here, which is also very good, you can point these, you can shape these quite a lot. So this is the same one as that one there, look. And just shaping it to a point like that, something like that. And you can very lightly dab and remove certain areas of the pencil drawing off that watercolour surface without rubbing that paper and hopefully not damaging that paper. Another good benefit for something like this is that I can just flatten that out and just roll it, just dab it like so to remove that pencil or that graphite. Now it's quite frustrating when you've got a tube of paint like this, look, and you're thinking, I can't quite get that paint right to the very top. It all sinks down to the bottom here, doesn't it? But in the palm of my hand, I've got a little special device called a paint saver. And all this simply is, you can make these out of a piece of copper piping as well, actually, I've done that. You add it to the bottom of the tube, and then you roll it all the way along, and it pushes and squeezes all that paint out of the bottom of your tube of paint here, further up, so you can actually make use of it all. Because I hate wasting paint down the bottom. It's also very good for toothpaste as well, okay? Now kitchen roll is something that I use all the time within my paintings. Don't go for the really cheap stuff. Sometimes you find it kind of breaks away when it gets wet, so it doesn't last that long. But it's really handy that when you're kind of working on your colours like this, and you want to wash that colour out, okay? So you're going to wash your brush out in some water first of all, and then dry it on your kitchen roll. See, that's not washed out enough, right? Okay, so then you can test it as well. But also, when you're working on your colours, let's get a little bit of brown, for example, and you think, my brush is a little bit too overloaded. Give it a dab a couple of times on some kitchen roll before you go to your painting. So that's a good way of just taking any residual paint off that brush before you actually start working on the painting itself. Otherwise, you know very well you can get too much paint on that painting. Do you have cheap and cheerful tips and tricks? Please share them in a comment down below. Now don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click on that thumbs up button if you found this video useful. Remember that lovely bumblebee from the graphite paper section? Let's look at that next. I'll see you there.